Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our, that's a little loud. Hello everyone, and welcome to our next session of our What is Your Truth series. And it's my honor and privilege to introduce Mary Lou Zeigler. And she is from Prison Ministry of Onondaga County, or Jail Ministry, excuse me, of Onondaga County. And just a brief word about this group. Since 1976, Jail Ministry of Onondaga County has worked to enhance the dignity and quality of life of incarcerated individuals in Onondaga County through daily presence, support, and advocacy. As a grassroots, spiritually based community, we offer a variety of services that support the incarcerated and make our community a better place for all. So, of course, Mary Lou will teach us much more about this organization and their ministry. And on that note, I'll turn it over to her, and let's greet her with a round of applause.
Are you able to hear me? Yes. Oh, okay. Because I could hear him very plainly, but myself, right there?
Yes.
Oh. Now maybe I'm too loud. But anyways,
Never too loud.
the interesting thing for you people here in Hamilton is that our founder, Bill Cuddy, he was Father Bill Cuddy at that time, that he started Jail Ministry. And this, we have a picture up here that you can see later of him, but he was the chaplain at Colgate. And so, kind of started here because he spent 2 years getting organized to start jail ministry in Syracuse. Now, our jail ministry is very different from others that I've heard of, because others, they go into the jail for Bible study, and that is wonderful. But we have that too. But we are advocates for the people inside. So that if anything comes up, we are there, but we are also there to support the staff. I mean, it's working together, and we find it very important that any of our new advocates, that which they are trained, they go through a training in the fall, and then they go with one of our seasoned advocates into the jail, and, they're supervised as long as, someone feels that they need it before they go in on their own. And but as I said, we're advocates, so we have, some that do just, Bible study, and then there are others that do other things for the inmates. And we had a house at one time called the Slocum House. And that was where, when Father Bill Cuddy left Colgate, he went to live at that house on Slocum Street in Syracuse. It's over on the west side. And so we had that for a number of years. It was just, I want to say, 2 or 3 years ago, it was probably been 10, that we gave it to someone else. And they were building tiny homes in Syracuse. Maybe you've read about tiny homes. And that's another ministry in itself. And so the young man, took that over. And then he built some tiny homes right next to it. We had an empty lot. And that was going to be for, women coming out of jail that didn't have a place to go. But that was our idea of Slocum House, too. It was all set, we had furniture, we had everything. But we lacked one thing, and we never got it. So we never were able to be, so that we could, help the women that were coming out of jail. And that was, we couldn't find a woman that would come and stay like a house mother. And so when I've been in groups like yours and they're thinking, let's start a home for women, or let's start a home for men. And then I tell them about our situation. I mean, we had everything. I mean, if you're going to start, you're going to have to go out and buy a building. You're going to have to buy furniture. You're going to have to furnish a kitchen. I mean, there's a lot to it. And we had all that in place, but we couldn't find anyone that wanted to move in and stay with the women. And so that's why we gave it to the young man that was building the tiny homes. And he took in Syracuse is a sanctuary city. So he took in refugees. And then he wanted to remodel the house and move them out, which he had another house. They didn't want to go. They wanted to stay there. And so I'm not sure how we made out with that, because we had the tiny homes for women next door, and we had to supervise that. But we've had some problems there. I'm not sure, I am not up to date on how that's going at this time. But anyways, when Bill left here, he asked the bishop to assign him as the chaplain of the jail in Syracuse. And so that happened, and then with another group of people, that's how they moved into Slocum. And Bill lived there along with a few other people, and they were very interested in helping the people in jail. And so you might say, well, how did we raise money? How did we? And one thing that they did, there's Unity Kitchen also, and then I have up here Unity Acres, which was, Father, Father Ray McVeigh, who started Unity Acres at the same time that Unity Kitchen was started, and at the same time jail ministry was started. They were all started by this group of people that were working together. And so that if we had someone in the city getting out of jail that didn't have a place to go, we might send them to the Acres. And I know I was visiting someone in prison a week or so ago, and I said, when you come back, this might be a choice for you, is to go, to the Acres. And he'd never heard of it. So that's something. And I know there are down people that used to be swamped with people, men. It's for men only. And but I understand they're down to about 40 now. When Father Ray McVeigh was there, they would have, a lot, maybe over 100. So this is, kind of a quiet thing now. But our way of making money started out with bread. I was at Unity Kitchen. I think I started to tell you there a moment ago. And I said, where do you get this delicious bread from? And so they said, well, have you ever heard of jail ministry? They make this bread. And so that's what they did. And then the parishes in Syracuse sold that bread to the people in their church. And so that was one way that we made money. But that bread was really outstanding. And I was sorry to see when it stopped. They tried to start it again. But again, you have to have the workers. And we don't always have that. And so it goes by the wayside. But, so Bill was there for about, Bill just stopped a year or two ago, or maybe even more. But, he is still alive, but he is in Nottingham, in Syracuse. I went to see him a few weeks ago, and he's doing well, but, his mind is going a little bit. But he certainly remembered and told me a lot about, jail ministry in its early days. And it was a great love of his. And so the bread is one way. Donations are another way that we get. We have people that donate either on a monthly basis, a yearly basis. And we're very grateful for that. And anyways, at first, when I began, I was in the old PSB, the Public Safety Building. And it was archaic. I would go up on this elevator. I didn't know whether I was going to make it or not. And then we didn't know who was in jail because you sat in a cubicle with, bars between you. And so I looked the same to him as he did to me. And so, that became overcrowded. They were stuffing them in there. I mean, they had, say, around 300 for a place that could fit maybe 160. So then they built a new one. that would house, between 600 and 700. Well, do you think they're going to fill that one? They're going to fill it. But now with the new bail system, they don't have the numbers that they did have. They had around 650, 700. We, at Christmas time, this coming Monday, will be bagging up a bag for each person that's in the jail. And we give them about 10 different things. And so we meet and we do all that in about an hour. But, anyways, where was I? Kind of got sidetracked on that one with the, we had, they do have, lots of, not as many now. We're only going to be doing about 450, is what I'm told. And so then we also, we had the phone call system where they were allowed one free phone call a day. So they called us. And we would have 3 or 4 people in the office on phones that were directly connected to the jail. And so they would ask us to either call their mother, call a girlfriend, call, their wife or whatever, and we would do that for them. And we would shut down for about an hour at lunchtime, and then they'd open up again in the afternoon. And so we did that. But now we aren't doing that anymore because there aren't as many in jail because of the new bail system. They're down in numbers. And so that's nice because the only people that are in bail are the poor people unless also you have a stiff sentence for some reason. You haven't been sentenced yet in a jail because if you get sentenced, you're going to go to prison. And so they'll move you out when the first vehicle that's leaving. But other than that, you're in jail just because you can't afford bail. And so you sit there, maybe you've lost your job, maybe your family's mad at you because, this is where you're at. So it's a sorry thing. So this new bail situation is very good for the poor because the wealthy, and you read about them in the papers too, some of them go through a couple of trials and they're out there the whole time because they can afford bail. Where a poor person, they're going to be sitting inside, waiting, lost their job, maybe their family. It's a very tough thing, for the poor. But now with this new bail system, that's a wonderful thing to happen. And, pardon? Now, there was a problem in the jail that the jail ministry took care of, and that was shackling. This was back a while ago, and a person named Kathleen Moon, she was in the papers and so on way back then, and she set up a cage out in front of the jail and stayed there to protest against the shackling. And the shackling was where they were hung from one side of their cell to the other side with nothing supporting them and no clothing on. And some of them were left there for a long time. And then I talked with one man, I was his advocate for quite a while, and he told me that he had been in that situation. And he said the worst part of that whole situation was the old Syracuse University football helmet that they put on his head so that he couldn't hurt his head banging against the bars. And he said that thing smelled awful. It was terrible. And that was his idea. I mean, that's what he thought was worse. I would think the whole thing was more than I'd ever want to handle. But Kathleen sat out in front in a cage to protest against that. And there were even people that are in the police department that didn't believe that that was going on. And, yeah.
What decades did this happen? Is it a recent?
sure. Let me see. Jail history started in '76. Maybe it was in the '90s. I'm not sure. Does anybody ever remember hearing about this?
No. It was for hardcore cases, was it? Why would they do that?
Oh, because if they misbehaved inside or they didn't like, yes, that's why they would do that. You know, if you had a deputy that didn't care for you, I mean, that's what's happened. You know, or if you irritate somebody, or I suppose they would say, if you started a fight or, you know, you destroyed something, because sometimes, you know, they do that, they'll destroy. I can remember one telling me, he said, you know, the mother, I think, told me I paid for the toilet. My son ripped the toilet up. Well, he had mental issues. You see, we have, you know, like 5 floors, 4 floors, but they have different numbers, that's why I'm not sure. So it goes up to the 5th floor, and that's where we have what they call the SHU, segregated housing unit, and that's where if you misbehave on the other pods, then you get sent there. And for some, you might know it as the box, because you're isolated, and there are a lot of things that you can't do or can't have when you're in the SHU. Like with our Christmas, anyone in the SHU does not get a package. They're not allowed to have that. You know, they're boxed in for 23 out of 24 hours, and then they're let out for supposedly an hour into some type of a place where they can exercise. And, they don't have, I mean, I used to go in there and there would be somebody in every box. You know, they're 2 tiers, you know, and they're all, and then they would have a 4-man cell next door where some that they didn't want in the general housing population that were even, you know, did other things that weren't appropriate, and they would put them in the 4-man cell. And we had a place on the 5th floor also for teenagers or people, once you reached the day, if you were incarcerated on the day of your birthday and you became 18, then they move you out onto the floor with, you know, whatever sex you were, and then the females would go with the females and that kind of thing. And I know that they moved people on their birthdays because I would be visiting them and they would tell me, you know, I'd say, oh, when did they move you down here? And, you know, oh, on my birthday when I turned 18. So that's how I found that out. And of course we have the pod where, you know, the sick are taken care of, and some of them, you know, they come in and they're sick. I mean, there was one, let me see, the Chili's murder. The woman who supplied the car was someone probably weighed between 500 and 600 pounds. And so she was directly, you know, in the medical part. And then, you know, she went on to prison. So, you know, it has to be very hard for someone who weighs so much, you know, to live and where you don't have any control over, you know, where you're staying or what you're doing. And so they do have medical. And we did go in on the medical floor to visit those people. I've done that. And then they have housing for those that have mental problems. And they have one that's mainly for the younger people. They separate them from the older people. And I don't know if there would be, you know, questions you have that about jail ministry.
So how would you define your particular role right now as far as your ministry?
I'm an advocate. I would go in and see Keith Zaplicki, our coordinator. He takes the names of people that would like someone. We do not go to see anyone that hasn't asked for us to come. And so, but, you know, the people within the jail are very happy that we're there. They're saying it does relieve a lot of tension. because we are able to talk to their families, and we're able to get back to them. Either we go in person or we send a note. And
Because they still only have one call a day.
that is correct,
For
yes,
X number of minutes.
yes, true.
That's hard.
And that's a free call. Now, I've had people that have had money that, call me. And so that would not be their free call, that would be, or if they wanted to ask me if I would accept charges, that's another. So, I'm not sure if that's handled, well, this is your one free call, you can use the phone only once. I'd have to ask about that, I haven't thought about that at all. But there are people that, I've become friends with and see afterwards or follow up with, several in fact. And one was a quadriplegic, and I don't know, you might remember her from the paper.
Who?
She's a quadriplegic and went to prison. And I know I was in the courtroom where the judge said, don't think that I will not send you, upstate. And because, someone might think, you're a quadriplegic, I wouldn't send you there. But she did go. She went to Bedford. Because the women go for Bedford, that's down in the Hudson, that's the induction center for women. And then the men go to Elmira. And then the men have far more prisons, and then they go out into the state, wherever, it depends on, I believe, on their crime, what they're accused of as to where they may be going. And so, our jail ministry started right after the Attica uprising. And I do have the book up here, Blood and Water. And that's a very interesting book about Attica and what happened there and what started the uprising, how they were treated, and what happened after the uprising, if things improved any. And how many, they were, they smogged them in, with something where there was they were covered with like a smoke or something, and then they went in with guns, the state police did, and they had no guns inside. And so a lot of them, I've forgotten 30-some, I think, were killed. Yes, yeah, it was a very sad situation. It was out of that uprising that we started jail ministry. I wasn't in the beginning. It started in '76, so it was in the mid-'90s when I joined. As I said, when I found out about their delicious bread, I said, who's making this? And I followed the bread. Yes. So, but if anyone has any, yes.
How do you deal with your heart? You must be able to separate somehow.
How do I separate what?
Separate your mind and your heart from what you come across.
Well, I have an hour's drive. That helps. And I just think, so many of them, they have gone through so much that I just, it's only by the grace of God am I, And just thank God that I've had the opportunities that I've had, and that I'm a follower of Jesus, and that helps. And to bring that into the jail, is my goal too, so that they can learn about Jesus and be a follower.
So you do bring that when you advocate.
I hope that they can see that too. I know that they have a lot of thoughts on their mind that they want to talk to me about. And so, we talk, but I hope that they can see the reflection. That's why I'm
Just
here.
listening to you.
Well, glad to be here.
You have a very calming effect. So you listen to them. How do you start out when you spoke earlier about the bars, and you look the same to them as they to you?
Well, not at the new one. We sit at a table, just like we were And they're sitting right next to me. We're in a little room, the door is closed. Are there speakers inside? I don't know. Because I didn't say anything that, you know, the deputies couldn't hear. And so we visit there, and a lot of it is, you know, you've asked for us to come, how may I help you? And then they tell me, you know, what they would like, you know, how they need help.
And do you have a guard in the room with you?
No, no.
So
No.
these are people who are trustworthy enough to...
Well, they don't have any weapon. I mean, they could, I suppose, you know, they could,
get angry and...
yes, they could do that, but most of these people are very pleased to see jail ministry. They know we're there to help them, so they're not angry with us.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've never had that problem.
What is the organizational part of it? Who is responsible? Who's taking charge?
Keith Saplicki is our coordinator. Keith Saplicki is our coordinator.
And she's...
He
He is...
took over Bill's place. Bill was the
But it
coordinator.
was an interfaith kind of thing, or it's just...
No, it is a Catholic organization.
Okay.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I forget that it's Catholic too. But Unity Kitchen and Unity Acres they're all Catholic. They were all started by, well, I mean, jail ministry and Unity Acres both started by priests. And then Bill, I didn't tell you, Bill, in the end, this is his picture up here, he got married in the mid-90s. His wife, Pat, she was married to somebody that was well known in Syracuse. I don't know what his name was. I think his first name was Dick, if anybody knows this person. He was a well-known radio announcer in Syracuse, and then he passed. And Bill had been their pastor, you know, for a long time. And so then, I don't know, years later, you know, Bill married Pat, and then he had to leave the priesthood, so that's why, you know, he's not going as Father Bill anymore. Yes.
So it's a part of the Catholic Church mission.
Yes, yes, yes.
Under the Diocese of Central New York?
Now, you know, under the diocese, well, we were at the Chancery for a while, before we went to the Baptist Church. Yeah, we're wait a minute, it's the wait a minute, no, I think it's a Presbyterian.
Okay.
The Presbyterian Church. It's on the corner of State and something else across. It's not far from the Justice Center. But I think they gave us a better rent deal, maybe. Yes. And we have a number of rooms. It's very pleasant there. We're up on the third floor. It's a huge church. I was telling Pastor Bill, it's a huge church.
So people come, so how is that? You use that area for what?
That's where the office is. That's where Keith Saplicki is, his office, and that's where, you know, he has a secretary that works, and then there's another woman that helps him, and her office is there. The regular people in jail ministry, well, they might go there when they have their training, but other than that, they go right to the Justice Center. And so there's not, you know, a big trail of people going to that. One thing that we've had this fall, we do every fall, is we have usually 2 or 3 Jesuits that are in training, that have come into Syracuse. They're at Des Moines, and they help us. And I know Keith and I would just look at each other and say, where do they find these wonderful men that come here every year? I mean, they're very outstanding people. And yes, they've never sent us anyone that wasn't just, you'd say, they're outstanding. Yes. Very compassionate, very, yeah. And then they leave us in January because they want us, well, they leave at our Christmas party, that's it. Now, that's next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we will go onto all the paths. There'll be a number of people that'll come. We sing songs. We have musicians that come with us. and give each person individually a package. And they, when they're able to get up and sing if they like, sometimes they have had, people that have done solos and have very good voices. And so we've had some of the same musicians, and then, I've been around so long, some of the musicians, have passed also. So,
Well, it's always seemed to me to take heart in, it's hopeful for me to think of Debbie and I know Dick Hartshorn over here on Hamilton Street, grew up with us, he was younger, and he took his bass violin and I don't know where he went, I can't remember the country, but he would travel overseas or south and play his bass for the prisoners. And his was classical music, and he had to go to the effort of conditions for the bass and so forth. So I always thought, that is so cool that prisoners respect and like that.
yes, they do. That is one thing I would say. They do hold a respect for us when we do go in. And, yeah.
And so you can sort of guide them, do you ever have definitive answers to whether they have gone out after their jail term and earned a living? And
We usually don't hear from them.
okay,
No, they just, they leave and we don't hear
we
again.
don't know the results.
No, it would be just people that maybe have become, close friends. I've had a few women that, I have lunch with every now and then. And so we stay close and yes. Yes, and people, they get put in necessarily and not doing anything wrong. Could be a vendetta, a spouse could put them there. Yes, yes, sad.
What goes in the bags?
Oh, a pair of socks for one thing, and an apple, and candy, cookies. Let me see, we give them puzzles. I'm trying to think of whether we give them the jailhouse pen or not. The jailhouse pen cannot be anything they can use as a weapon. So it's very good floppy. You don't want to use yours. I've been places where that was the only thing we had on the table, and it's like, I don't know how you use one of these things, because they're so flexible. But they look like a filter, that you put in a pen, but there's nothing to them. They're just, strange. But I'm trying to, puzzle. We also give them a couple of Christmas cards with stamps on them that they can send. This is another part of our jail ministry being different, in that the jail lets us do this. Because one, stamps. You can't send stamps, you can't bring stamps into a prison. You can't, give your loved one. And now, in fact, the one that Keith and I go and see, we have to order things from a company and have it sent by a package to him. We used to be able to buy things locally and take it in. And we would buy what, he told us over the phone he would like. We can't do that anymore. We have to send money to this company and they send it in. So, and I guess, I don't know, maybe it's to do with drugs. I don't know what the situation is, or whether they got tired of looking at everything. That was another thing. I went to Bedford and I was able to take things in. And I can't tell you how long I waited for someone to look at my things before I could move on. And then when they look at it, they really go over it. And, does everything get to them? I don't know. So.
Are there any kind of social services at Genesis Center, social workers, engaged with various?
Yes, I would say so. Yes.
Figure out what they're going to do after they leave and that sort of thing?
I don't think they're there for that necessarily, no. I would not say that. I never run into that kind of thing, but,
Is there any kind of organization that charities
people who had been in prison, who then have kind of reformed, quotes, and help other prisoners learn how to negotiate the world, and I think they did.
Well, if they came to Slocum, if we had a house and they came to Slocum, that could happen, but usually those people don't go into the Justice Center.
I wonder if they.
I don't think they could get a pass to go in. Because you see, where they're trained by us, they're fingerprinted, and then they do a background check on them before they're given a pass. And we have 40 to 50 passes, so we have that many people going in. And they go in on their own time. They set up their own schedule, they go, so we only know if we look at the book at the front desk as to who's been in. And we sign the same book that the lawyers and that sign when we go in. So you get to know, the deputies and so on. There are those that are very thankful we're there, and then of course there are some that wish we disappeared.
So along the lines of what Beth said and what I was getting at dinner, you learn, you and your people who are doing the ministry learn your boundaries, and you just have to practice. When I taught English as a second language, I was asked not to get attached to certain people's situations that were coming to learn English.
Mm-hmm.
One had been abused by her husband in the Air Force, and I took her to a shelter in Utica, but she couldn't get intertwine,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and have lunch, the way you mentioned.
Oh, like I could have lunch with someone, yes.
Yes.
That's after they get out.
Right.
Yes.
And then you can.
Right, where I have gone to, I followed them to prison, and we visit them while they were in prison over the years. And then when they've gotten out, then I, maybe go and pick them up. I pick them up and then brought them back to Syracuse, and then meet with them. They don't come to my house. And then I meet with them someplace in Syracuse.
Is it for the purpose of
Social.
listening? Yeah.
Yeah, just, social, and just, it gives me a joy each other's company. And,
How long this is the Justice Department, what do you
to
call
the
it?
Justice Center.
Yes, how long do they stay there? Because they haven't been convicted yet of anything.
Well, that depends. Now, sometimes they're there for years. They'll be there for 2 to 3 years. And other times they're not at all. They're just, it depends on how long it takes for their trial, if they go to trial, or if they, do a plea and go faster. Yeah. It's something, this one that Keith and I visit, I was there when he decided to go to trial. And I was there when the people started walking in that they were going to select from. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but it was like, I just felt, oh my, these are the people that are going to decide what happens to him for the rest of his life. These people that don't even know him. And that's an awful feeling. Just to think, oh goodness, they've got control.
Especially if you're black.
Oh, and most of the people inside are black, especially in the prisons, yes. You're in the minority, being white. So, yes, but
I assume you weren't able to go in the Justice Center during COVID, during the.
No. Yes, we've just started going back, and Keith was able to go in to some extent. And then our hired person, she was able to go in to some extent, but no, it's just been recent. And we just had class, and that's the first one we've had in a long time. Yes. So,
And the class means.
they've been trained. We just had a training. And everyone started going in.
And how many were in that class?
Well,
Approximately.
I don't know, 10, 12. It was a good sized number considering. everybody in my house was filled, but everybody had another place to go, and my husband went to be with his family on the West Coast because his mother was not well. And we had animals, so I had to stay home and take care of the animals. And so then I decided, hey, this is my opportunity to get out and help in some soup kitchen for Christmas. So I came here to the kitchen and thought, oh, we don't need anybody. But I convinced them that they needed me.
Yeah.
So,
the bread.
well, then anyways, I went and helped them, and then I was with them, and then they closed for good during the pandemic because we were all getting older. The young people aren't doing that. And, you know, the group is changing too. The younger people coming in off the streets are different than the older people that live down the street. There's a difference in that. And the people that were leaving and just, you know, found it harder to cope with that than it was the older, you know, people that were out on the street. It's a different person. So, yeah.
Different, do you think?
Well, I guess the attitude, yes. You know, it was just very hard. And so Peter said that, you know, just couldn't do it anymore. So
You were just in
Peter was the person that was in charge of the kitchen, and his wife. And she was wheelchair bound from the time she was like 14 from rheumatoid arthritis. So her range of motion was, like her arms were here, she could do this. That was her total range of motion, and she ran the soup kitchen from her wheelchair.
And this is all ecumenical or non?
They were as Catholic as could be. Amherst as Catholic as could be. I mean, I'm a Protestant there. Oh yes.
Yeah.
I couldn't even read scripture. Yes. So I could work in the kitchen. I couldn't read scripture because I wasn't Catholic.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's not true of the children. It's true. They wouldn't care. I mean, I could read scripture for them. But Peter and Anne were as Catholic as the Pope. You know? Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Does anyone else have a question that maybe they didn't ask for yet?
But wonderful people. I've met wonderful people through the whole thing. It's just, you know, I guess it's a certain kind of person that shows up,
Right.
that wants to do that. Yeah.
I had a question about pen pals. Could a church such as ours do pen pal work back and forth?
Yes, now, that was one thing that Keith set up when we were, you know, in lockdown, or when we had COVID, that people wrote to the inmates. So, yes, you could write.
I did a little of that in Boston one time. The church was setting people up, but it didn't last long.
Because I know the person that we visit down in the prison, he writes, he has someone that writes to him. I don't know whether he writes back, because I'm not sure for what reason he doesn't write back. I mean, he can't spell. You know, being a teacher, we know that some people would not feel comfortable sending one of their letters to us. So, any more questions? But you can see that how we're different from just doing, you know, just going into the Bible study. We are there, you know, to follow up on it and to, you know, just try to learn that way. So that they know that we're coming in, they look for us.
You're safe.
Yes, I don't, you know, no.
Yeah, you're safe for them.
I mean,
They feel safe with you.
right, they do. They feel comfortable with us, yes. But you know, do take a look at what I brought. I brought some books you might be interested in. This is one thing that, is this Mike's one?
Yes.
This is one book that Keith and another person in jail ministries were teaching from this with the inmates. The inmates actually had the book, and they were helping them to adjust and not, to be so confrontational and so on, and how to get along. And this is the book that they are using. So,
You can be strong.
oh, and there's some bookmarks up here for each one of you to have. And I think we pass those out. And then this is the person here that started Unity Acres. That was for men coming out of jail that had no place to go. And he passed away in the mid-90s. About the time I saw him once, but he was the kind of person that would take his shoes off and give them to you if he thought you had any on, so that's what he did. And that's why you're seeing these old clothes, because that's the way he went about.
That's the way it was.
That's the way he went about town, that's the way yes, he was the one, he worked and did everything else on the farm at Unity Acres, which is like a big farm out near, Pulaski, maybe even north of Pulaski. Out that way, yes.
It's called what?
Unity Acres. And then the kitchen we had was Unity Kitchen. They were on Salina Street at one time. They housed people overnight too. And so they went, they went to serving a lot of people to serving as you would if it was Jesus in the house. So that it was beautiful oak tables, with, dinnerware, silverware, 3-course meal, prayer and everything. Sit down, and then there was always a server with you at the table to make sure that you got, whatever you needed. And yes, that was their way of serving in the end. And it was very nice. Yeah, it wasn't the soup line like the mission, but, the mission's doing hundreds, I guess, probably.
Yeah.
And so that's the only way you can do that when you're feeding a girl. So. anyway.
What's the logo on the t-shirt?
Those are the many colors, I guess. This was designed by, I'm not sure who made the design, but the whole thing is, I guess, is my take on it, is that we hold up, is that, we're all in this, kind of together and all the different colors of people. And then breaking into jail, you're the ones going in. So we're going into jail for over 45 years. This was last year's, I think. I don't know if this was this year's. But, yes, it's been a long time. And very different because
Mary Lou taught second grade for 39 years and did missions work and
oh, yeah, went to Ukraine for several years. I feel very bad for them. Very bad. Yes, they're suffering people. But here, if you want to,
I want to mention that Mary Lou's passing out bookmarks. You can feel free, before she heads out, to take both of those pictures of those books. Also, in the back of the church, our church made a donation to jail ministry. But if you'd like to make one yourself, they're offering place in the back of the church.
Feel like me, you're reading more than one book at a time.
So can we go on?
Yep. And as some of us go to maybe head out or look at things, why don't we just give Mary Lou a big round of applause? And she came all the way from Oswego, so thank you.